Thank you, Cesar.
Okay, good luck today.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, Gloria. We're kicking off with Gloria Petersen, the lovely Gloria Petersen. And we know Gloria loves colors and she loves innovation and she loves to come up with ideas. And so she came up with this idea for book authors. And we're really pleased to have I believe, 6 of 8 of our first sessions with book authors today. Welcome to Global Chamber and our series. My name is Doug Bruhnke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. It's my particular privilege and honor to host and moderate this conversation today, not just because of Professor Roberto Ancis and Victoria Ancis are here and they're members of Global Chamber, but far beyond that, they're old friends. Certainly, I've known the professor for many years. I am just so amazed at what they're able to accomplish in all of the things that they do. And lo and behold, they've written a book. And we're going to be talking about that today. Not just the topic, which is critically important to all of us in our lives, but the way they've done it is unique and different and special and also memorable as a reader. And so I think you're going to really enjoy the session, not just because we've got 2 amazing people here, but because of the story and probably what you're going to take away. You know, one of the most important things that we're going to be talking about is the basis of this book that they've written, 13 Rules of the Game of Life. And instead of just kind of laying it out, here's the 13, you know, lucky 13. And I'd like to know a little bit more about how we ended up with 13, because whenever I get a bullet list of either 4 or 13, I'm always like, do I get it 3 or 5? And 13 is always usually 12. I remove one somehow, but they're adventurous and unique individuals. And somehow they came up with 13 to tease fate. And so I'm interested in that as well. So we've got a lot to cover. So both of you, thank you so much for coming in today and talking about this extraordinary book. Oh my God, you know, how long has this been brewing? You know, how long have you been talking about this, and kind of what's the duration of this process now that this baby is being birthed?
It is. And I believe, what is it? Has it been 9 years ago, 12?
7 to 8 years, yeah.
Yeah, 7 to 8 years.
Okay.
And it's been through 3 professional audits, or edits, should I say.
Okay.
It's been a work in progress. It's a very magical book. You know, Doug, the first thing I'd like to do is I would really like to begin by thanking you for this great opportunity. And also to thank Gloria, who organized all these wonderful meetings. And I want to say hello to everyone who's out there, to all of you who are participating and watching this webinar. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Victoria Ancis, and my husband is Professor Roberto Ancis. And for the past 30 years, we have been offering self-development programs. And in these trainings, we identified a life model, a path, and life philosophy, which has led to profound answers for tens of thousands of students, seminar participants, and clients. And with these outcomes, they were so helpful that my husband and I decided to write a book. And it wasn't going to be a how-to book, but rather an inspirational novel where the lessons that we teach in our programs are embedded in the story. And the title of our book is called The Journey of Choices, City of Knowledge. And our fictional story takes place in Wales about 1280 AD. And it describes the dangerous journey of the brother and sister, Bowen and Alice, who live with their guardian Yorth. And they're in the process to reach their uncle, in the City of Knowledge. Their uncle is Mirrodin. He's also known as Merlin the Wizard. And he sends a raven to Yorith that says, with a message that says, I'm going to ascend. I'm going to leave this dimension. And Bowen and Alice need to journey to the distant City of Knowledge. So Mirrodin summons his powerful knight, Cadron, to protect and escort Bowen and Alice on this journey to the City of Knowledge. And upon arriving at the City of Knowledge, there's a treasure chest that's waiting for them. And they're going to open this treasure chest that was left to them by their parents, who were the king and queen of the realm. They're going to travel by horseback while guided by their warrior knight, Cadron. And Bowen and Alice are going to face endless perils as they cross a forbidden forest, and with treacherous mountains and very challenging bridges. Danger leads to enlightenment as life lessons emerge in the story of our book.
I'm going to write that one down. Danger leads to enlightenment. I like that. I think we can all relate to that.
Right. And we write about that in the book, No Fear, right? And that's, I believe is one of the lessons in the 13 rules of the game of life. So danger leads to enlightenment as life lessons emerge in our book. And through these encounters, they meet talking animals and druid trees and dragons and other enchanted entities that ultimately become the 13 rules of the game of life. The story concludes with an explanation of how life lessons learned by Bowen and Alice during their journey to the City of Knowledge are teaching guidance to all of us in this world. These lessons have become showcased and explained to all the are explained to all the readers in the 13 rules of the game of life. For almost all of us, there's a time in our lives when we decide to stop running and we ask ourselves, what am I doing? What do I want to do now? How do I want to continue in my life? What legacy do I want to leave behind when I move on? Am I living my life according to my beliefs and values? Am I happy with my life? Why what used to work for me no longer works? Our book offers reflections and solutions for these existential questions. And with that, on that note, Doug, I'm going to turn it over to the Professor Ancis for Q&A.
Okay. No, that's great. I appreciate the background there. I think it's set in Wales, right? So, speaking of the Global Chamber, it's international. You talked about the realm and all of that. So how did you choose Wales as the setting? Have you been there before? Is that where your family's from, or what's the...
No, Roberto is, as you well know, Italian. And yes, I've traveled all over Europe and I love Wales. Actually, when we started, I was doing some research and there's a famous pub in Wales and they heard about our book. And I said, hey, I want you guys to promote it when we get it going and it comes out. Wales, it just came to us. It was part of the... It was part of the whole picture.
And there is also something else when you research historically and you look for what you call the old school of knowledge in Cavendish or Cafferton, the old city, that's what the old school was. So we decided, where do we want to put a magical book with basically magical outcomes that discuss the dimension that we typically, my background is science. So, and I've been in business, so very clear, rational, above subconscious level and below the higher self of Dr. Young, etc. But when one actually start looking at what are the real, how do I live my life better? You know, and what is it I need to know? How do I raise my children to be optimal in the world? Or as you created for the Global Chamber, how am I really unstoppable? Well, one of the elements behind being unstoppable, Doug, and everybody else today, is the issue of personal unconditional commitment. And you have it, Doc. I mean, you and I have known each other for years. And I never remember once that you say, I don't have time, or I don't want to assist, I don't want to help. You are one of the most gracious individuals I ever met in my entire life. And you're also intelligent. I used to be a competitor in the old days.
DuPont Mont Edison days, yeah.
So, but this being unstoppable is not achieved easily. Actually, it's never achieved. Why? Because in life, there are reasons. We are individuals who basically function by reasons rather than functioning by personal unconditional commitment. We always have something else that becomes more important. And then you ask ourselves, why didn't I get there? Well, we don't get there because we get either distracted, or we get confronted, or we have our, what we call in the book, ineffective behaviors that are based on incorrect belief systems that we develop when we're very young, that actually been filtered in our lives. So one of the things we teach in the seminars and in the book, and the big challenge to Bowen and Ellis, Doug, and all of you listening, has been the issue of really seeing reality for what it is. We don't. Most of us see the reality through our filters. When somebody talks, if we agree with their belief system, say, oh yeah, they're right, and we like them, right? The chemistry. But if we disagree, sometimes we stop our listening. So all these observations in terms of how do we really achieve our road to what's important to us in our lives are embedded in the book through magical elements like Victoria described. And why magical? Because it's really magic. Our subconscious is the magic of our success. Our higher self is the guide. Our rational mind is the implementation. But you know, it's like in my program, sometimes I say, it takes me 10 seconds, 30 seconds to decide that I want to buy a Ferrari, but it takes me 30 years to justify it. So, and that is basically how the book proceeds. It actually it allows the reader to confront these issues in their own lives. Okay. And so they can actually find a resolution. It's actually, I called it magical because that's the only way I can describe it.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Victoria.
Oh no, I was going to add a little footnote there that we've had people who have read the script or the book, and it's very close to being published. All right, we're like a few steps away. We're down to formatting. I went through and I do graphic art technology, and I did pictures in each colored pictures with my graphic work that depict each page of the story and tell the story pictorially, which is interesting. But we've had people that have read the book, several people, and they get back to us and say, I had all these magical things happen in my life. And nice. I myself experienced it when I went back and read the book the second time. I had an invitation to journey to the Amazon in Ecuador and live off the grid with 2 indigenous tribes. And I want you to know I'm a room service girl. So this was out of my comfort zone. And this is something that we do address in the book, the comfort zone. And I want you to know it was life-changing. With all the jaguars and anacondas and all the little bats and everything that was going on, it was magical. And that I attribute to part of the book, because the book captures the magic of life.
Fantastic. I have layers and layers of questions, so I'm really interested
Go
to
for it.
dig deep
Go
here.
for it, Doug. Go for it.
One of them is what came first here then? The 13 rules of the game of life, right? Did you, like 7, 8 years ago, did you already have that in place or forming in your head? And then how did you come up with then, like, let's tell a story, to get this out? I mean, how does that process work?
Well, yeah.
Go ahead,
I just quickly, I'm going to just footnote that rather than do a how-to book, because let's face it, we do seminars, right? We kind of stepped out of the box here and thought it would be very interesting to do a fictional story with talking animals. There's the evil master. There's all sorts of really cool things going on in this book.
You took it that way. And when I think of the storytelling in a book, one of the ones that was instrumental in my life was a book by, I think it was Eli Goldratt, right? The Goal. Maybe it wasn't Eli, but I guess it was, right? Theory of Constraints. And he told a fictional story of this guy in a manufacturing plant and all the things he discovered. And through his story, engineers and plant people and folks kind of understood the secrets of life in a manufacturing plant. And so you took this thing to way past that, right? To whales and to other places. But isn't the basic concept the same? Where you're through that story, you're not just like somebody lecturing you on stuff. You're actually in the story and you're starting to maybe learn these things on your own. Is that the basis of why we learn from stories so well?
Yes, Doug. And the reason for that is when you look at learning, talking as an academic now, when you look at learning, how do I have the students in my MBA programs on the seminar learn? People don't learn. Okay, when I teach, there is very little learning. But when I ask the question, like Socrates used to do, when I ask the question that deal with the topic, which allows then the listener to recreate the model within themselves or the experience, they actually never forget. So the same way when you first got on the bicycle, you didn't know how to ride it, and you failed a couple of times probably, but you never forgot. The purpose of the book to write the story is so that when you read the story in yourself, you will fantasize the same event. They say, oh, what would I do? In fact, at the end of each chapter, there are the questions. They say, what would you do in this case? How would you handle it? For example, the issue of the comfort zone. Most of us in life has a true, authentic resistance to continue doing what I'm doing, although it doesn't work well. But is the way for us to control the environment, right? So for us to get out of the comfort zone in what I call the uncomfortable level, where really success exists, right? In fact, you, Doug, I'm sure you've been uncomfortable many times. Every time you get into the uncomfortable area, you have an opportunity for success, right? So the book describes it. So when I'm reading the book, I say, how does that apply, for example, to my digital design? Am I really truly, I worked for 25 years in this company. I'm not really that happy. I can do this stuff, but I go home and I drink and whatever. I'm not happy. So the question of the book, the reason for writing the book in this modality is to allow the reader to dream, fantasize, and incorporate the rules and the lessons.
Okay. Especially as Victoria talked, the word enlightenment really hit me strongly, and kind of the whole concept of people in life, right? The questions she asked about, am I happy? You've said the same things. The word enlightenment means something to me because every day we're surrounded by people who seem to be drifting through life, or even, hateful, or, racist, or, all of the kind of the negative things and all of the things that are kind of like drifting people, right? I've lumped them just for my own safety into people who are unenlightened. And I think we've learned the last 5 years is there's an awful lot of unenlightened people. And so the first part of it is to ask those questions, right? And don't we not ask those questions typically because we don't want the answers, And so how, I presume the story, by doing the story, it doesn't force us to just kind of address questions, right? It starts to like get our head into it, and I presume, start to then, ask questions. It seems like the next phase then is, once you've asked those questions, you're either going to do something about it or not. And that's the other aspect, right? Is it's one thing to kind of realize where you are and are you happy and all of that, is like, what do you do next? And that's the other problem, right? Is people don't ask the first questions, but even if they do, they don't take actions to correct it, or it seems like the majority of people. You mentioned about tribes. I think the global tribe generally does. I mean, almost everybody I know in Global Chamber has some level of enlightenment that seems higher than average, because they understand culture, they're interested in culture. It's some level of door opening that they've created in their life. So I'm wondering how important enlightenment is, and how have you been thinking about that to be able to draw more people in and maybe make that transition to ask questions and do something next?
Would you like me to address that, Victoria? Would you like to?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll add my footnote at the end. How's that?
Okay. When we look at first of all, Doug, thank you for sharing what you shared. It is true. What you just said is exactly one of the reasons for which we decided to write the book. Is you get to a point in your life that money is not an issue anymore. Competency is not an issue anymore. It becomes really, what am I here for? What am I let's say this, if there is an afterlife, and I'm in front of, in the Catholic religion, with Paul and Peter, right? And Peter asks, what did you do in life? I said, call Doug, please. Tell, right? So the question is, what am I leaving behind as a life legacy? I mean, did I come here just to be a gerbil on small or larger wheels, or am I really here to make a positive difference? Now, at 32 years old, I went through a series of programs about mind dynamics, really an investigation of the self, Kierkegaard, the essential reason for being here. And I discovered something about that I could do, and my life totally changed. And the Roberto, the professor, today is not the same person that I used to be at 25 or 30. I really moved towards that goal and objective, which is being enlightenment, but not the one on top of the mountains, where you come down from the mountains, then you go back to what you used to be. No, is really the issue of being enlightened every day in what we do. My goal every day, you know me by some time, my life goal every day is, how do I make a positive difference in the people I meet? That is not religion. It's just really be there for them and assist them with all the intuition and knowledge that I have in my network to actually allow them to reach their achievement. Their achievement is my achievement. So the problem about the Enlightenment is that the way we live our lives is very predictable but strange. We either live in regret of the past, like the past is controlling us, what we did when we were young children, or the people that we didn't communicate, or the people that we moved our lives, or the fear of the future. So the present basically does not exist. We don't live the present. The power of now does not exist for most of us. So what the book does, it allows the reader to really have an introspection in who am I now, what do I want to do now, and eliminate or handle the fear of the anxiety of the future of doing things that they've not done before. So you become brave. So enlightenment to us is not something that you aspire for the rest of your life. You get to about 85, 90, you die, you're not achieved. No, enlightenment is about every day being enlightened in your actions. Does it make sense, Doug?
It does. Did you want to add anything, a footnote, Victoria?
Well, it's a practice. It's a way
Yeah.
of life. And it's how we live our lives. And I believe that we share that gift that we have with others. We address a lot of different things in the book, where Bowen and Alice, as they're on their journey, talking animals will come up. Like, for instance, Adar, who is the wise owl, shows up. And Bowen is sleeping and he doesn't wake up, right? And Adar wants to give him some message. He wants to give him some guidance in his life. And so the next day, he remembers what I think Adar said. And that was that last night you missed a very important lesson because of avoidance. And that's another area of the book that we, I mean, there's so many areas, Doug. I mean, it's so empowering, the book. And people that I've talked to throughout the years, even in the film industry and whatnot, I was at, when I was invited to go to the Amazon, I was at the Illuminate Festival, and we were in the back room with all the producers of the movies and whatnot, and sitting at a round table, and all these guys are sharing their movies, and they turn around and they say, "What are you here for, Victoria?" And I said, "Well, we did this book." And so I start sharing it, and some of the guys that had their back to me turned around and they go, "Victoria, that's a movie." And I said, "Well, yeah, I always say, Harry Potter, move over, here we come."
There you go.
So the idea here is to get the book out and make a difference in the world with the simple things like keep your word, things like that have been forgotten throughout the years in this generation per se.
Understand.
I want to address something, Doug, that you said that I did not address, is the avoidance, or am I not asking the right questions because then what the heck do I do with the answers, right?
Right.
And
yeah, and it's
yes,
also potentially, sort of like things like white entitlement, as an example. By addressing that and understanding that, it's almost a self-indictment. So we don't want to go
absolutely.
there.
We don't want to
because
confront it. Absolutely.
we don't want to confront our own foibles or frailties, I guess is the right word.
Yes.
So, and that's dangerous stuff, right? We don't want to know who we really are. And are you saying that we actually
Absolutely.
start to ask those questions in a safe,
Yes.
comfortable way?
Yes. And
Safe environment,
and
yes.
what we say in the book in a particular event is that the Bowen analysis discovered what self-deception is. Self-deception is the belief that I'm living a perfect life, while instead I'm living a fantasy of what I like my life to be through my perception and filters. And I really don't see reality. I see everything through my filters. So it's like, for example, if I believe that that money is important, yes, all I see is life through the filter of money. If I don't make money, I won't do it. And so you're missing the entire universe of other dimensions whereby personal contact, contribution, sharing, ability to work with others, making a positive difference, they become relevant. Like in Europe right now, as you well know, most corporations today, they actually have in the P&L, they have a statement about social relevancy of the organization. And that becomes very important. So what is the good old columns of sustainability? What is the social contribution that the company, for example, the social contribution, Doug, that you are making with the Global Chamber now is immense, So the monetary issue, which is yours to look at, of course, you got to survive there. But I see the Global Chamber almost like as a social mission to bring people around the world together, which is totally aligned with what we wrote in the book. And I really thought about you when actually we're writing the book in a number of times in terms of what you do. And you'll find out when you read the book that part of the story is exactly about the same challenges that you encounter, but also the ability that you have to become an observer, therefore eliminating the emotional resistance that you might have otherwise.
Interesting. I think that the things you're talking about also are applicable to any entrepreneur, right? The courage to actually do something, and to have, after having come up with something. And then to your point you're making now is things happen, and people want you to fail. And there's all sorts of, there's adventure along the way.
And they find out when they step out of that comfort zone, that's when when everything happens.
Okay. Well, so then your comment about danger leads to enlightenment is the story of every entrepreneur.
Yes, yes,
and really
yes.
every human
Every human, absolutely. I mean, Doug, frankly, if you have come here to the earth for whatever reason, if you have come here to the earth to sleep, might as well not be here.
Yeah.
We are missing such an incredible opportunity to be full, which I call enlightenment, right? To be enlightened is to be full, of all emotions and all part of life. If we come here to sleep, in a deep sleep, and ignore everything else that is around us, why are we here?
Yeah, no,
The
that's
regret
fair.
that people have, at the last breath of their lives is typically, we have collected information on that from parents or people that were participants to say, why did I not do this? Well, it's too late. Life comes and then life goes. So what we do in between is really what counts.
Really important, a really important message. I have a couple more questions and I'm going to open it up for others to ask. We do have on stage some of our other authors who have mostly spoken. And so in a few minutes, I'd like to ask if you have some questions as well. And then we have an audience that's, within the stage in addition to that. And if you have a question, the best way to get it to us is in the chat area, and I'm monitoring that. So please feel free to go there. One of the questions I had for you, just from a practicality standpoint, and we'll get back to some of the messaging we've talked about and the importance of what you've written, is just how did you work together for roughly 8 years to write a complicated story? You live together, right? Even
Absolutely.
when Victoria was traveling to South America, there have been times when you've been apart. But how did you divvy up the work, and how many times were you like arguing and over dinner and throwing things at each other? I mean, what does this process? How wet is this process?
Well, first of all, we don't argue and throw things. All right.
Okay.
But that is really cute. I loved it. And I think that it was a collaboration. It just came together in such with such synchronicity.
Okay.
It was just it was a beautiful story that we received, and we just made it happen throughout the years with several edits. I know when I was in the Amazon, Roberto kind of went crazy because we were, for a whole week, I had no internet, I had nothing. He didn't know and I had taken a fall and all that stuff. But when I came out of the Amazon and we were at this wonderful a spa, we're all sitting up on the stairs, and the concierge comes out and he goes, "Victoria Ancis?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he goes, "I have a message here from your husband." It was so cute. It was so sweet. But he wanted to let me know how much he missed me, and that we had sent the book in for an edit. He goes, "I want you to know you came out of the Amazon today, and it's the 13th, and our editor finished the edit of the book." So
Nice.
it was just all those little things that happen along the way were
What a sweet guy.
Yeah.
We typically, in terms of the method, which will be useful to writers, because sometimes either two writers get together to write a book and collaborate, or a couple or whatever. The way that we work together, the best way is I seem to have the ability to reach messaging, call it messaging, and to be creative. So I do a draft. I don't even think what I'm writing. I just write. It's almost like automatic writing, blah, 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 all the way. Then once I'm done, I said, "Okay, Victoria, so this is the baby to be born. It's 2 months old. Take it." And then she picks up what I create. I said, "Okay, this one here doesn't make sense. This here makes sense." So she basically puts creative organization in what we created. And then once we have done that, and we were happy with the model that we had, because the important thing is the model. Then the write-up, the content, the language, the grammar, the examples are also very valuable because they carry the message. But at the same token, the model must work consistently throughout 13 chapters, about almost 400, 500 pages. So what happens is she organizes. Then after that, once we both are happy, we send it to the first editor, which we did. Then we get the book back. Then we didn't like some of the stuff that the editor did. So we found actually a publicist, one of the most well-known publicists in the country that used to work for Eaton Corporation. We said, listen, we need some more excitement in the visualization of the story. So, and that is Victoria. I had very little to do with it. Victoria picked up the work with this publicist and worked for probably 4 or 5 months to recreate the power of the word. So the linguistics created a visual impression rather than just being a concrete thing of observing, right? So that's what she did. Then after doing that, we sent it again for the last edit to make sure that everything would be working okay. And now Victoria, she's incredible. Those images that she's recreating for the book are expressing the visual imaging of the book itself, which is also expressed by the linguistics of the word, are incredible. I mean, these could be, one of them could be a painting. In fact, what we're thinking to do is to create a book, leather bound, made in Italy, of course, right? Leather bound, gold leaf, and everything else. There's going to be only 1,500 copies, only for the call it the charter participants, and then we'll publish the story in 3 different volumes, so that people will be something easier to read on the plane or waiting or at night before going to sleep and everything else. So, but that is really how we worked. The work was creative, supportive. There was no make wrong whatsoever. And there was a really learning and experience how to work together as a team, knowing that I can create some new stuff, but I need Victoria. But the book wouldn't be here if it weren't for Victoria. That's as simple as that is.
Oh, he's being too kind. It was a real collaboration, but thank you, Roberto.
You two have been married for what, about 26 years, is it? Or
27,
27 years. And so
we actually been married for 2 months, Doug, since the book is finished. No, 27 years.
Yeah.
Once you got the book basically hammered out, then
absolutely.
it's like, oh, what the heck, let's get married.
And, you know, when you were asking the question, Victoria and I, when we moved to Sedona, we bought this property, which was not what we're used to. So we went through a supposedly to be 12 months remodeling that lasts for 5 years. And we survived the remodeling. So we actually had already a technology methodology whereby we stayed together no matter what. And that was challenging.
No, it was. And, you know, one of the inspectors came in and he said, you know, my brother does inspections back east, and he has a sign behind his desk that says, want a divorce? Do a remodel. So it can be challenging, but we always kind of, what would I say? We just roll with it. I mean, it's just who we are and how we're connected and part of how we met.
Is that part of the book as well? And I know from the story of how you two met, you know, I think about that idea of almost magic that can be created by just kind of going with the flow, to use your words. You know, these two met because Professor Ancis was looking for a home, correct me if I'm wrong, in the LA area.
At the beach, right?
At the beach, and he's wandering around in his car, and suddenly his car doesn't start, and he sees
a brand new car too.
Brand new car.
2 weeks old.
His car stops in front of an open house, which doesn't match his desire or need, but he goes in anyway, and finds you in there. And when I think about that story, I think about kind of the path of least resistance, and just kind of there's another thing going on there, right? It's a little bit beyond, maybe it is enlightenment, I don't know, or maybe it's magic or whatever. Is that part of what we're talking about here?
It definitely is. Yes. And one of Roberto's key life the way he lives his life is says, whenever I have resistance, I go in and I follow that path. And that's what he did with me. He says, I walked in and I saw you and I said, wow, now I know why I'm here. That's for all the women out there that are.
No, it's actually very Chinese, isn't it? This is a conversation I've had with Todd Cornell, our
Yes.
executive director in Northern Colorado, and he talks about Americans, and even Western Europe, we tend to see an obstacle and we want to knock it down, right? That's kind of our approach. And the Chinese approach is, well, let's just like water flowing down a hill, just go around the obstacles. And is that part of this kind of where we're headed with this?
In fact, part of the book is teaching Bowen the art of martial arts. And martial arts being seen not as a breaking down the barrier or the obstacle, as you said, which is true, but is really going with the flow, like the yin yang. Is really going with the flow. In fact, the first thing that you learn when you learn judo and karate is really you go with the force of the opponent. So you don't, in physics, it's simple. You know, if you create a force that is big, you have another one that is exactly the same and nothing moves, right? Well, if you actually adopt the martial principles or the principles of flowness in Asia, same thing in business, right, by the way. If you use that approach, then you don't have obstacles anymore. Okay. You have basically elements that you go around, and it's like in business with the clients. Why do our clients, why do they become successful? It's because I use my intuition. And by the way, I can't tell the client that I know the solution in 60 seconds. Otherwise, I won't get paid. Truth is, sometimes it takes me 6 months to 9 months to drive them through the point because there is this innate resistance not to want to know the answer, which is obvious because it's filtered. So we use the same principles with clients whenever we have, in business, every day you have a challenge or more, right? But if you look at that as a barrier, you're not going to move. But if you look at that and say, okay, so this is the condition of what I see. The question is, how do I restructure the foundation so that I can go around it and use the force of that resistance? For example, one client that wanted to come here with food supplements for people. We talked about it. Said, well, there are about 87,000 products in the US. Big obstacle, right? Incredible. So they say, well, how would you solve it for the US market entry? I say, well, you do US food supplement for pets. They said, oh, well, food supplement for pets last year in this country increased by $180 million. The rate of growth is 27%. So all of a sudden, we redesigned a whole totally new paradigm because of the resistance, which was obvious. There could be seen as an obstacle, but instead we just did the flow, right? So now we're using that flow to actually create basically a $50 to $100 million company, which you will know in a few months because they will become public.
Interesting. We've got about 10 minutes, and I see Lainey, and she has a question. I think you're up on stage too, Lainey, or anybody else. What questions do you have? And feel free to ask right away. Just unmute yourself, that's all. Let's see if Lainey is up here on stage. Maybe she's not. Oh,
here, right.
Oh, okay. So let me go back and let me find her question. Hold on. So do you think you'd ever do a workbook related to the book to guide people to understand the 13 rules of the game? And along with that question, I'm wondering, just to confirm, what I understood was each one of these chapters is a story, and then at the end of the story, there's questions that I guess test you to whether you made the right decision or whether you're thinking properly. And then this question, then, okay, subsequently, does it make sense then to have a workbook, or what's the next step beyond this?
Video game.
What I was
virtual reality. Yeah, there you go.
No, what I was thinking about it, and is interesting that Lainey channeled my thoughts, but I've always, I taught in Japan. I lived in Asia for a period of time with Philips. I was a consultant for them. So I really like a lot about the Asian lifestyle especially when it gets to what do I do with business? And look at China, what they've done from being nowhere about 20, 30 years ago where they are today, and Taiwan and Vietnam, et cetera, et cetera. So I was actually thinking when Lenig said not to give away the title, but the title of the book could be The Way of the Samurai. And that would be strictly a book that would convert the 13 rules of life to actually the rules of work. And there is actually in the book something that is from the old book, the old research in Alexandria, in old Egypt. There were the books of the sophists that actually give certain guidelines about how life works and work works. And I really always thought about being able to put them into the correct model. And the model is there. Now the question is, how is it going to be delivered? And the same way we did the whale story for Boeing and Alice, for the generic rules about life and enlightenment, I would very much like to do the samurai book, whereby there is a samurai that's traveling across the old samurai's world and explain that in 13 different chapters. So that's in the works.
Okay, interesting. Victoria, anything you want to add to that?
Well, also, pardon me, we have kind of looked at the possibility of doing a video game with the 13 rules of the game of life, which would be fun because there would be rewards at the end when they figured out the rules. And that's a little farther down the way, but that's a possibility.
Okay. And I saw, Gloria, your question about maybe going through the 13, but my own sense is not to give away all 13, but if you'd like to, please do. My thought was maybe give us one or two and kind of what are some of these rules? And is one of them the danger leads to enlightenment? Maybe, I don't know if you were joking or not, but are you able to articulate what one of these rules is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of the things, we talked about it a little bit today, but I would say what we start is the rule number one, I'll give it away. It's called the rule number one is discover true reality beyond your own perception. What is with no interpretations, judgments, or filters by expectations. So the question, that rule is so important that let me say this here. Our lives, our happiness or unhappiness, most of the time that comes from our expectations. And this is something interesting. There is the 10th rule is about us being not only the writer of our life, but the actors and the directors, right? When you put these two rules together, what happens is if I start suspending the expectations, right? And I actually look at the goal they can achieve and learn from my everyday life as an enlightened individual, then my full life potential shows up. So, but if I continue my life looking at what I consider reality to be my own reality, to be considered universal, I don't get anywhere. Because, Doug, we can go to, you know this, you go to a meeting, you leave the meeting, and if you ask 10 people their perception of the meeting, you'll have 10 different points of views. So we need to learn how to abandon that is driven by our perceptions to really see what is true. And when I spoke with Michael about the past, the current, and the future in his book, that is very much something that can be achieved by following and learning these rules. But the first rules is, and it's not easy to do, Doug, how can you really listen to people? Go home to your wife tonight and look, let me listen to my wife for what she says, not what I hear. It's not easy. It's very challenging, very difficult. Sometimes it's impossible because we really never know the other person. We only hear what we choose to hear. So the question is, how do we practice that reality is what it is? We don't, most of us.
So this is applicable on a personal level, but certainly
Yes.
from a business level, this is a normal problem, right? We
Yeah.
perceive the market because of our own filters, and we don't really see it, and we make all sorts of mistakes. And so
Yes. And Doug, sometimes, let me say this. Let's say your director, let's say Cesar comes to you and he says, Doug, you know, you really should not go to, we should not go to Vietnam. Okay, then Gloria comes and he say, well, you know, I heard a lot of bad things about Vietnam, don't go. Then I come over and say, Doug, you would be a fool to go to Vietnam. What do? Your world of agreements, perception, reality says, oh, I'm not going to go to Vietnam. When the truth is you know nothing about Vietnam but the judgment of others. So, and that's what we need to learn, how to set aside other judgment, look at reality for what it is, in business especially, so that then the decisions made are based on factual reality and not perceptual fantasies.
okay. And just kind of stripping away all the things our parents did to us, and all of our history and all of our perceptions, and cutting right down to it.
Absolutely, Doug. You're right on target. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's a frightening thing. And it sounds like it's done professionally, it's done, you know, emotionally, but safely, you know, in the book. So, that's really exciting. So the concept then is that we are kind of very interacting with these characters and their situations, and we then bring some of these many of these things inward to walk away with enlightenment ultimately.
And Doug, the important thing is this. The book is designed to the point whereby there are no imposition of actions, but they are enlightened realizations, and you only move at your speed. So you only go where you want to go. There's no imposition. There is total, what I call lack of judgment, which kills relationships, by the way. Lack of judgment is the principle of the book.
Okay. Is the book enhanced by the use of either wine or controlled substances?
No,
we don't. I don't drink alcohol.
We don't drink.
The worst. I have to say this: the only
younger days, Doug. Younger days.
Okay.
The only substance
it was mostly a joke. Sorry, I did.
No,
but
the only
that's interesting.
I'm addicted to is aspirin. I take an aspirin every day, mini aspirin. So, but that's
okay for your heart.
That's my choice drug.
So you have each other for your life drug, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you and people around. We have been gifted to have around wonderful people that we learn every day. I learn every day. Every time I meet with you, even today, I'm learning. As long as the person, as I am open to listening, then the learning is able to bring me stronger in what my enlightenment is. I couldn't be enlightened without you and without everybody at the Global Chamber. When we do the program that I do with your kindness, I learn more from the students, from participants that I just know myself, that I teach myself. It's just been open to learning.
Fantastic. Well, we're at the end of the program. There's two things I want to do. One is have each of you just make some final comments, and then we'll talk about the next two programs as well. Which one of you would like to go first? Maybe a minute or two summary, or anything else that maybe we missed discussing today that we want to make sure our listeners absorb before we finish. Which of you would like to go first? You want to flip a coin? Are you guys like in rooms next to each other, or different parts of the house?
Are you? Our offices adjoin to each other.
Adjoining. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Next door.
Next door. Right over there.
So I cannot hear her. But I will say this here. First of all, again, I want to thank you, Doug, for today's opportunity and for being willing to have this series of the authors. I've done a tremendous amount of learning from all of them. I want to thank personally Gloria Petersen for the incredible determination and organizational skills to bring this to reality. And then, of course, Cesar, who's, to me, Cesar is my hero. You know, is the guy behind the scene that is never seen. And I want to thank everybody today who assisted, who participated, who asked questions. And because, again, is my life goal is to make a positive difference in the life of everyone. Victoria?
Fantastic. Thank you.
And I guess my closing line is very simple. Buy our book and check it out. Check it out. I really feel there'll be some wonderful lessons, and we plan to offer a special discount on our book when it comes out for the
Okay.
Global Chamber, and we'll work that out with you. All right, Doug?
Well, what's the expected time frame?
Well, we're right now into the formatting, and then we're going to go into publishing.
30 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely by October will be available.
For the people on the call or others, do they need to be in a certain life state? Do they need to be semi-enlightened or enlightened to benefit
No.
from this, or can they be?
Not at
The
all.
only requirement is they must enjoy fantasy books.
Okay,
Right.
got it. So-
I think that we had a young man. He was about 16 years old. He was Menza. The kid was very smart, and he read the book when it was in the draft. And he went to his father and he said, and at that time we have a website, by the way, it's www.thejourneyofchoices.com. Okay. And he went to his dad and he says, Mom, I don't know if this is for her. He goes, but this book, it's going to be around for a long time. And then all of a sudden I have Google Analytics and I see all this spikes coming from the kids at the high school that he was sharing it with. And it's I think it can reach all ages. There's something in there, Doug, for everyone.
Fantastic. Love your basic idea. Love the fact that it took you 8 years to get to this point, which I'm sure there are many, many stories associated with that. And the fact that you now have a next step as well is really exciting. That it's not just a one and done. It's a process that you're embarking on to help more and more people. So thank you to both of you for being so enlightened and for sharing ways for more people to reach that state. For me, it was my father passing away and just watching him holding his hand for the last 8 hours of his life that got me to where you mentioned, Roberto, about, why are we here? What's the purpose? Why? This was about 10 years or so ago. And I've been somewhat partially enlightened, but that was kind of like the last straw. Like, time is short. And so you got to do more. You got to find ways to impact the world. And you two have clearly had life experiences that have inspired you, not just to do more, but to have a process to get there. So I'm really excited to read the book and for the Global Tribe to learn more, because as I mentioned earlier, I think in general, the Global Tribe is more enlightened because of their worldly experiences, right?
Totally.
If you lived in one small town and just had kind of that kind of mentality your entire life, it's a lot harder to kind of see what the doors that you're opening up here. And so hopefully everybody reads the book, and let's share our experiences from that. The next 2 weeks, we have really exciting shows and programs too. Every program we had was been full of amazing people like Ancis is here. Just really excited that you guys took the time to share all of this amazing information, and all of you that have shared so far for the first 5 weeks, now 6 weeks. Week 7 are actually, I think all 3 people. I know all 3 people really well. It's conversations with authors, healthcare and home care. And, to your point, Professor, about, finding your place and doing something that impacts people. Rick Shapiro is one of the people on the program next week. And he is an M&A guy, one of the smartest people I know to fix businesses and to sell them, just probably the best that I know. And when he had a family death from cancer, he decided he was going to find out all of the ways you can cure it. And so through his journey of multiple years, it probably is at least 8 years, he wrote the book, Hope Never Dies. And it's amazing. It's just like, it's heart-wrenching. It's fantastic. And it's a blueprint for people who are enlightened, to say, you know, there's more than, even though he's brilliant with M&A, he decided he was going to do something
That's right.
completely different and impact people's lives. And then he's got 30 stories in the book, and I can't say enough about it. Another fellow next week is William Harding, who's from Medtronic. He was skydiving and he fell into power lines, and he almost died. And that created a variety of enlightening opportunities, almost literally there, right, with power lines, where he, from near death, came back and has lived a life that's been extraordinary. So besides their books, they're extraordinary people, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. So Gloria, are you still up here? And did you want to say any final words? There you are. Great. Thank you for. Again, thanks for all that you do. And did this meet your expectations?
Yes, I was going to also, Debbie Howard, you know her?
I do know Debbie Howard.
Okay, anything about her that you can share?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. I started with 3. It's sort of like there's 3 ways that the government helps you. And what's that third way? Wait a minute. So the third person, Debbie, very similar to Rick in the sense of, 30 plus years in Japan, market research, a leader, in so many business ways. And then when she was caregiving for her mother, it inspired her not just to do the caregiving, which many of us have done, but she's taken it to the next level where she has a roadmap for people and for companies. 30% of employees in the US are caregivers. And do employers care historically, whether you're caregiving to your folks or your, someone in your family? Historically not, and that's not a good thing. Companies, speaking of enlightenment, need to be enlightened. And so Debbie's journey has taken her to beyond business, where she's so good, where she's now teaching enlightenment to companies to care for caregivers. And so I think you're really going to enjoy these 3 amazing people. The last week we won't get to because we don't have enough time, but there's 3 more people that are fantastic. Join in next week, 6 days and 23 hours from now, Gloria, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. Anything else that you'd like to say in closing?
I'm moderating that one, and I just want to say it's special for me to moderate that one because I have almost not seen Tomorrow 3 times. One to cancer, one to a senseless act of violence, and another one was a near drowning. So I am really proud to moderate that one about survival and how we move on.
I guess that's what it's really about, is these 3 have survived.
Yeah.
They've used their enlightenment to help others, and they wrote about it. So it's 3 levels of amazingness, which is very special. So you've seen 2 amazing people today, plus Gloria, plus hearing about next week. I hope you join us. My name's Doug Bruhnke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber, and I'm having fun every day. I hope you are too. And I think I'm going to have even more fun every day when I read this book. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Gloria.
Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
You're a true champion, Doug.
You're amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.